Hey, Bez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Shavuos Daf Zion, and we're going to just to discuss what we're going to be discussing today is the pasuk in describing the carbon oil of the yard. The carbon oil of the yard is a funny type of carbon. If you do something by mistake, well, let's say that we're going to see what it is. The Torah tells you that you bring, if you could afford it, you bring a sheep, a female sheep, or a female goat for a chatas. And then the Torah gives you a choice, which is unusual. The Torah, when it wants you to give forgiveness, its Payir says, "V'mloi sagia yodei deiseh." Let's say you can't afford a sheep. What are you going to do? The Torah says, then bring two birds. And then you bring one as a chatas and one as an oila. Then the Torah says, what happens if you can't afford two birds? So then you bring a carbon mincha, which we'll discuss all this throughout the Masechta. So you did this special avera, and the Torah like ladders up the carbon chatas depending on what you could afford. What is the avera that you did? So one of them is very clear. A man, let's say a man swore he's going to do something bad. Let's say he swears he's not going to eat. And then he violated the oath by eating. Or lehativ, he said he's going to eat, and he violated the oath by not eating. And then he forgot the shvua. And then he violated by accident the shvua. So then you bring this carbon oil of yared. But that's easy. The hard part is the Torah tells you in such a cryptic way. The Torah says, if there was a person that touched any davar tameh, right? Or he touched the dead carcasses of a wild animal or a domestic animal, the carcass of a dead, or he touched the sherets. So he touched this. Vanilla Memeni he forgot about it, and he didn't get tar, he was tameh, and he ashen. This is the key word. Ashen. He did something wrong, but the Torah doesn't tell you what he did wrong. Let's say he touched a mace. And he made a mistake. He doesn't know. So the Torah didn't tell you what he did, what the two errors that he did to bring this carbon osham. So we know from the Mishnah, it says that what he did was he was tameh and he ate kachim, or he was tameh and he went into the Beis Hamikdash and forgot. And then he remembered, oh, how did I go into the Beis Hamikdash? I was tameh. How did I eat this kachim? I was tameh. Then the Torah says you bring a karbachatas. So the Gemara is now asking, how do you know that's what we're talking about? So Tana Rabbanan, we're starting from Daf Vava Midbeis, about like 10 lines from the bottom. It's 8 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, how do I know that the Torah, when it says that you bring a carbon oil of the Yerid, is talking about someone who went betuma and went into the Beis Hamikdash or ate kachim? How do you know? The Torah just says that you did something wrong when you were tameh. The dinhu, says the Gemara, it makes perfect sense. So the Gemara says it makes perfect sense that it's talking about Tumas Migdash Ukudashiv, that you violated going into the Beis Hamikdash or you ate kachim. Why? Because Hayil Izr v'Onish al Hatuma. The Torah gave you a punishment if you do something betuma. V'chayev carbon al Hatuma. And the Torah, as you see, by carbon oil v'yared, it says if you do something wrong with tuma, you have to bring this carbon. So, when the Torah punished you for doing something wrong on tuma, there's a clear pasuk that says that if you violate something on purpose, bituma, you get kares. What two things does the Torah give you kares for if you violate on purpose? Only if you go into the Beis Hamikdash and you know for sure you're tamei and you do it on purpose and go into the Beis Hamikdash, or you ate kachim when you're tamei and you did it on purpose, the Torah tells you that you get kares. So the Torah tells you what we're talking about clearly when you violate it on purpose. Af kishechi of carbon alatuma, when the Torah gave you a chi of carbon on tuma when you do something by mistake. And even though the Torah didn't tell you what you did wrong by mistake with the Tuma, it must be also talking about like Chiyav Elal Tumas Migdash Kedashav. It means that you violated something to do with the base of Migdash or eating kachin. So that's how I know that the pasuk is talking about he did an error on concerning Tumas Migdash or Kedash. Says the Gemara of Ema, let us say Truma. Maybe the Torah is telling you have to bring a carbon oil of the yared if you eat Truma betuma. The Truma, the gift to the Kayin, you eat it betuma. Shehizev Anish, the Torah gave you a punishment called if someone eats Truma when he's Tame on purpose, he gets Misa B'dei Shemaim. He doesn't get Karas. You see, Misa B'dei Shemaim is you die young. Karas is, in addition to dying young, the person gets, his children die. So there, the Torah says by Truma, you get a punishment, if you do it on purpose, you get Misa B'dei Shemaim. So if so, maybe the Torah is telling you that if you eat Truma by mistake, B'tuma, you would also have to bring this carbon oil of Yared. Says the Gemara, we don't find that you get the death penalty of Misa B'dei Shemayim and you chayav a carbon. The only time you chayav a carbon, if b'mezid, you would do such a violation, you would get kares. Let's say someone works on Yom Kippur, right? So then, on purpose, you get kares. So if you do it by mistake, you have to bring a carbon chatas. But something that had a punishment of Misa B'dei Shemayim, there is no carbon if you do it by mistake. Says the Gemara, not true. Carbon kavua. That's maybe all true that by this you don't require you to bring a regular chatas if the mazid is misa b'dei shemayim, then the shoygi cannot bring a carbon chatas. Avol, but this oila, we go to Amid Aleph of Zayin Amid Aleph. Oil of the yared, this carbon oil of the yared, they say you should bring it because you see in the Chumash that it is brought on something that does not have a misa b'dei shemayim if you do it on purpose. It has no punishment if you do it on purpose. Maybe malchus. The Torah tells you that if you swear falsely, right, or if you violated an oath, or shmiyas kol means that somebody came over to you to join him in testimony because you know something and he wants you to testify in court. You say, I swear I don't know testimony for you. And that's not true. So then the Torah tells you that you have to bring that carbon oil of yared, as we saw in the psukim. Oy nefesh kishava levate b'svayim, oy levate of ashivate adam b'shvuah v'nel memenu. So then you bring a carbon oil of yared. So since they don't have on the if you do it on purpose, no misa, no kares, the Torah says you bring a carbon oil of yared. So we see that this is a weaker form of avera than eating truma on purpose. And the Torah tells you you bring a carbon oil of yared. So maybe the Torah is telling you that if you eat truma betuma, you would also have to bring a carbon oil of yared. Answers the Gemara, Omakra, the pasuk says ba. The pasuk says, let's read it inside. The pasuk says, the chol tu masay ashiyitma ba. The extra word ba, it. So the Torah is telling you ba lemute truma, that only in trumas migdash ukdashav you get Tumas Migdash v'Kedashav, you have to bring the carbon oil of the yared, but not if you eat truma. Says the Gemara, no. Why don't you say the opposite? Ema ba. Let's say this miut ba is lamute migdash. That if it's excluding that if you come into Beis Hamikdash betuma, you don't bring a carbon. The loisagi be carbon oil of the basic carbon kavua. Maybe the Torah is telling you that if you go into basic mixture betuma, you can't get away with a carbon oil of the yared that takes into an account your financial status and gives you a break if you can't afford it. Maybe that if you come into the base of Migdash, the Torah requires you to bring a regular carbon katas. And so that's what ba is coming to exclude, mute Migdash. But the avera of what you do bring a carbon oil of the yared would be if you eat truma. If you eat truma, the betuma, you would have to bring a carbon oil of yared, and not if you walk into the base of Megdash. So the Gemara says like this: Karibei Rava alei the Rebbe. Rava called on Rabbeinu Hakadosh. Doyle Bayrim bibaris hamukim. Rebbe can draw water from deep pits. In other words, Rebbe had a way of figuring things out from the Torah in a very deep way. So Rebbe solved the problem. The ambiguous nature of the pasuk. Again, the pasuk is very ambiguous. It says you violated something while you were tamei, you have to bring this carbon oil of Yared. What is it that you violated? The Rebbe said like this. Tanya, we learned to the Brisa. Rebbe says, the Torah tells you in a funny way that if you touched a nevela of a chaya tamei, we see it on the screen, the dead corpse of a wild animal or a domestic animal. Why does the Torah have to say chaya and then behema? Usually chaya, when the Torah writes chaya, it includes all types of animals. If you touch the carcass of any dead animal, that's tamei, you become tamei. So why did the Torah tell you single out behema? The word behema is extra. So why did the Torah say? Because it's a gzeira shava. Nema kan, it says over here, by carbon oil of Yared behema tmeya. The nema lahalam behema tmeya. It also says behema tmeya in another pasuk. We go to another pasuk. There is another pasuk in Parshas Sav. V'nefesh kisiga b'chol tomei b'tumas adam. A person who touched tumas adam oy bebehema tmeya v'achal mebsar zevach hashlom mashal Hashem, and he ate the kachim, then he gets kares. So here there's there's a word behema. Here the Torah clearly tells you that you ate the kachim bituma. The clear pasuk that this story, this subject of this pasuk is eating kachim betuma on purpose, and you get kares. So also the word it says behema regarding the context of carbon oil of the Yared, it's also talking about where you actually ate kachim betuma. So you bring a carbon, you pick malaham tumas kodesh. There, just like later on, it's talking about eating kachim betuma. Afkan betumas kodesh. So also over here, it's talking about you ate kachim betuma. So the Gemara says ashkechan tumas kodesh. I understand that you satisfied me that the pasuk of carbon oil of the Yared is talking about you eat kachim betuma. Tumas migdash minalan. How do I know going into the base of migdash when you're tamei, you also bring a carbon oil of the Yared? Amakra, because the pasuk says like this: V'chol kodesh lo sigav ela migdash lo savei. The Torah says by a woman who gives birth, that after she gives birth for 33 days, let's say for a male, she can't touch or eat any kachim, and she can't go into the base of Migdash. So we see that eating kachim and going into the base of Migdash have similar, are juxtaposed. Iskash Migdash the Kodesh. So therefore, Migdash is compared to Kodesh. So just like by kachim, eating kachim betuma, we just established that Rebbe says this Gzeir Shava, that you bring a carbon oil of the Yared. So if you eat kachim betuma by mistake, then you would also bring a carbon oil of the Yared. If you go into the base of English by mistake, you would also bring a carbon oil of the Yared. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, truma nami, then truma also, if you eat it by mistake, you should be able to bring a carbon oil of Yared. Damamar b'chol kodesh lo yisiga, the Rabbi says truma. When we say that a woman who gives birth, b'chol kodesh, anything holy she should not eat, it's referring to also truma. So therefore, this whole pasuk is one big hekesh. So then we're going to say that truma also has this idea that if you do it by mistake, you should bring a carbon oil of the Yared. Says the Gemara, but hamiyat rachmana ba, but we have an exclusion, the word ba, that says that you don't bring a carbon oil of the Yared on something. So it must be truma. So the Gemara says, ema ba lemute migdash. Maybe ba is coming to exclude going into the base of migdash by mistake. There you don't bring a carbon oil of the Yared. So the Gemara answers back, B'stavra, it makes more sense, Migdash lememitin shekein koharis kamoisa. Since Migdash is very similar to eating a carbon shlomim betuma. Because when you eat a carbon shlomim on purpose betuma, you get karis. When you go into the base of Migdash on purpose betuma, you get karis. So also, we're going to say that whatever happens by eating kachim by mistake, which you bring a carbon oil of Yared, should apply by going into the base of English by mistake. You should also bring a carbon oil of Yared, but not including, so ba will exclude truma. So the Gemara says, Adarabba, let's say the opposite, truma loimamayitin shekain achilasa kamaisa. Truma is similar to eating kachim betuma, because when you're eating kachim betuma, the way the violation is done is by putting something into your mouth, eating it. So also when you eat truma, you're putting something truma in your mouth betuma, as opposed to Beis Hamikdash. It's the actual walking into the Beis Hamikdash betuma that triggers the violation, and therefore I would say that only eating truma and eating kachim that you would bring a carbon oil of yared, not if you walk into the Beis Hamikdash. I would say ba is only memayit what walking into the Beis Hamikdash. So again, I clearly know for a fact that if you eat kachim, because of the Gzeir Shava, behema, you eat kachim, you bring a carbon oil of yared. How do I know? It includes also going to the Beis Hamikdash by mistake, betuma, you bring a carbon oil of yared. So Elam Rava says, well, I have a way. Shalas krisis b'shlamim lama. The Torah wrote the word karis. If you eat a carbon shlamim betuma, you get karis. The 3 times in the Chumash it says, twice in Parshas Tzav. It says, "Nefesh techa basasach shama sham tumasam nichrasa." Then it says, "V'nefesh kisiba," which we saw. It says v'nichrasa, both talking about eating kachim betuma. And then it says another time, kachim dizun nichrasa nefesh ahibi Yisrael in Parshas Emor. So why did the Torah write 3 times? You get karis. Achas l'klal v'achas l'prat. One is a general rule, and one is an example, which the Torah is telling you only if you eat kachim, you get kachim mizbeach, you get karis betoma. Let's say a person eats kachim bedek habayis, which is a different lower type of kedusha, a kachim that belonging to the Beis Hamikdash, but it's not a kachim that was brought on the mizbeach. If you eat something like that, you wouldn't get karis. So that's the two of them are needed. The achas the tuma ksuva. What is to teach you what the carbon oil of yared is talking about? Since the Torah wrote Tima and didn't tell you what you did wrong, it's telling you that it must be that you ate kachim. It's talking about Tumas Kodesh. But I don't need it to teach me Tumas Kodesh because I know that from the Gezei Shava of Rebbe. And in the Tumas Kodesh, the Nafkalei with the Rebbe, Tnei the Tumas Migdash. So if it's not going to teach me Tumas Kodesh, because I know already that carbon oil of the yared is brought if you eat kachim, so it must be talking about when you're going into the Beis Hamikdash, there the Torah also requires you to bring a carbon oil of the yared. So there's an extra kares by the extra word kares by shlamim, by eating shlamim when you're tameh. Says the Gemara, I need that extra word shlamim. From a boile trabo, I need that extra word kares to teach you another teaching, to teach you the what Rabbi Vo taught us. Amar Rabbi Vo said, Shalosh kresis b'shlama lama. Why did the Torah write 3 times kares? Achas klal achas brab achas vom shein ruin ne'acholim. The Torah is telling you that 1 time kares is to teach you that if I eat, let's say I eat something that's not edible, you also chayiv kares. Let's say you eat a piece of wood that was on the mizbeah, or eat a piece of kataris of the incense, you would get kares. And that's what the 3rd kares is teaching you. It's not just if you're eating meat. According to Shimon, if you eat something that's not edible, you don't get kares. Mishum toma. What does it include? What is it trying to tell you? If you eat the meat of a chatas that was sprinkled on the inside the heichal, let's say you sprinkle blood on the ketaris or the mizbeach hapnimi, like the chatas that was brought in Yom Kippur, where there the Torah tells you that you burn the whole chatas. There's no part of the chatas that's eating. The salt of daita chamina, I would have thought. Rabbi Shimon says this chatas panimius is an certain type exemption than a normal kachim, that you're not chayev of pigel on that. So I would have thought, since this is like a different type of chatas, if someone grabs it before they burn it and eats it, he should not get kares. Mishum tumanamiloi, kamash malam. So the pasuk tells you the mechayev. No, you chayev kares even if you eat from the chatas pnimis that's supposed to be totally beyond. If you eat from the chatas pnimis betuma, you would get kares. So what do we see from there? So we still don't have a source for going into the Beis Hamikdash. You bring a carbon chatas. You bring a carbon out of the yared. Ella Amar now Domish made the Rava. It shalosh tumas b'shlomish lama. I need the word kares, but it also says the word tuma. It says tuma 3 times, so there's an extra word tuma. Achas the klal, achas the prat, achas tumak subatar stam, many day mahi. Have you omed tumas kodesh? The alien tumas kodesh, daf going to be the Rebbe, today alien tumas migdash. So there's, instead of the word kares, that's extra, the word tuma is extra. And therefore, that if I don't need it to teach you that carbon oil v'yared is by eating kachim, so it's the extra word tuma will teach you that it's the carbon oil v'yared is by tumas migdash, going into the base of migdash. So the Gemara says, "Va'inami boile." The Torah needed to write the word tuma because it had to write the word kares to teach you Rabbi Bo's kiddush that if you eat kachim that are not things that are not roy to eat, things that are not edible, you also chayiv kares. So since it had to write the word kares, it had to write the word tumah because otherwise you would not understand what the pasuk is talking about. So again, where we're holding right now is I don't have a source that the pasuk by carbon oil of the yared is talking about somebody walking into the base of Mikdash. So Ela Amar Rava says like this: Asiyah Tumasi. We have another Gzeir Shabbat. Tumasi. Ksiv Hachet says by carbon oil called Tumasai. Uksiv, we go to Amid Beis. Ksiv Tameiya Oy Tumasai Boy. There's a pasuk by the Paraduma called an Ageya b'Meish b'Nefesh Adam Hashem Mishka Hashem Time. He walked into the Mishkan. He walked into the base of Mikdash. Then he gets kares. So Oy Tumasai Boy. It says the word Tuma. So it says by the death penalty of walking into the base of Mikdash, it says the word Tum Asai, and it says by the word carbon oil of the Yared, it also says the word L'chol Tum Asai. So therefore, L'chol Tum Asai teaches you that if you violated by walking into the base of Mikdash, you'd also be chayiv a carbon oil of the Yared. Malaham Tumas Mikdash, Avkam Tumas Mikdash. So we have two Gezeirah Shavuos, one teaching you that the carbon oil of the Yared is also by eating kachim, and another big Gezeirah Shavuos, a separate word Gezeirah Shavuos, to teach you that carbon oil of the Yared is by going into the base of Mikdash. So the Gemara says, then ve'ela ba lamali. Then what do I need the word ba to teach me anything? So the Gemara says, l'rabas nivlis oif tahar. That comes to include that even if you were tame, not by touching a sheretz or touching a dead corpse, there's somebody who, if you touch a dead chicken, you don't become tame, an avela of a chicken. The only way to become tame is if you swallow it. The Torah tells you only then of a kosher bird, if you swallow it, then you become tame. It has to do with eating. So therefore, I might think that if you eat a chicken and a nivlos of a chicken, you wouldn't have to bring, and you violated, now you're tumming that way, and you violated going into the base of Mikdash, or eating kachim, you wouldn't have to bring a carbon oil of yared. So that's why ba comes to include that even a nivlis oiftar, if you became tummy that way, you also have to bring a carbon oil of yared. So the Gemara asked, but you told me ha'amid ba miuti. You kept telling me that ba is an exemption, not an inclusion type of word. And says the Gemara, you're right, mishum dimiutihi iyata, because it's an extra exemption, and the Torah seems to repeat it twice. The pasuk says, when you bring a carbon oil of yared is oikiyaga yiga, you touch something that made you tummy. So I know the vei negia in the la ber negia loy, that only if you touch something that makes you tummy, you bring a carbon oil of yared. But the nivlas iftar, which you don't have to touch it to become tamei, you touch it, you have to swallow it. I might think the pasuk says that you don't bring a carbon oil of yared. Then the Torah says ksibah miyute. The Torah says only this and exempts anything else, any other type of tumah. Have a miyat, achamiyat. So you have two exemptions, one after another. The miyat, achamiyat, rabbis. That the miyat, one negative following another negative means a positive. So we include as part of the tumas that you become, that you would have to bring a carbon oil of yared, includes if you became tameh by swallowing the nivlas iftar. That even if you swallow nivlas iftar, and then you ate kachim or went into the base of English, you also have to bring a carbon oil of yared. Let's just do it a little bit further and we'll stop. Another 2 minutes. The Torah tells you, the Mishnah says that let's say a person knows that he's tamei, violated eating kachim, right? You violated eating kachim or going into the base of English, but you never found out, you never remembered that you were tamei. So then the Torah tells you, the Mishnah says, the sa'ir that was done on Kippur, that protected you until you remembered. Once you remembered, you have to bring a karban chatas. But until that happens, this was like a protection that God will not cause any suffering to you. Tana Rabbanan. The Torah says, this is this week's parsha, that the Tsar Hanasa B'fnim brought a kapara. So I don't know, from doing something betuma. So the Brisa says, Yeshli be'inyin zeh l'havi shalish tumas. I would think that this Sa'ir Hanasa B'fnim protects you from 3 types of tumah. Either you did an avodah zara, tumah avodah zara, v'tumah skilei rayis, or tumah shvichas damim. You did any one of these 3 averos, the Sa'ir Hanasa B'fnim on Yom Kippur gives you forgiveness. I might think that's what it's coming for. And how do I know avodah zara is called tumah? If someone does avodah zara, because the avodah zara says l'man tameis migdashi. That by avodah zara there's a pasuk that says you become tamei. You metama my migdash. Begili arayis who aimer shmater viti asois mechukas the avis. Well, he says tamu behem. Torah tells you don't do the adulterous relations that are usher in the Torah because you become tamei. In the spiritual sense, not the tummy that we're used to. B'shvichas damim, the Torah tells you if you kill somebody, how the Torah tells you don't defile the earth, the land. So you see that avodah zara, gilui rayis, shvichas damim, those 3 cardinal averos have the word tumah associated with them. So maybe I would have thought that the Sa'ir Hanasa B'fnim is coming to bring about a forgiveness for these type of 3 cardinal averos. Yochel al gimas tumas lo yesor mechapa. I might think that it's coming to mechapa on these 3 cardinal averos. Talmud loima mi tumas b'nei Yisrael, only from some of the tumah. V'loy kol tumas, not every tumah. And so it's coming for some other type of tumah. What type of avera is different than any other tumah that you bring a korban oil of yomer? So the word, the Sa'ir Hanas B'fnim is coming to bring about a kapara of tumas migdash u'kedasha. Now, obviously, if you remember, then and you did it by mistake, you bring a korban oil of yared. So it's talking about the Sa'ir Hanas B'fnim brings about a kapara if you didn't remember, you violated it by mistake, you forgot your tamei, and you never remembered. So there, it's like a protection. And one more minute. Reb Shimon, I know that even from reading the psukim in Parshas Achrei Mos, the Torah tells you that it's mechaper on tumas migdash u'kedashav. Harayu oime, the pasuk says v'chipa al kodesh mi tumas, mituma shel kodesh. It's coming to be mechaper on any tumah that you did of kachim. Yochel al kol tumah shebekodesh shem l'sar mechap zeh mechapa. I might think if you did any violation with the tumah of kachim, you get a kapara. In other words, I might think maybe the Sa'ir is mechaper, even if you remembered afterwards that you did something betuma. You went into the base of Mikdash and you remembered, and you chayiv a korban oil of yared. If you didn't bring the korban oil of yared, the Sa'ir Hanasa on Yom Kippur will bring about forgiveness. I might think that. Talmud loimba b'pishem l'chol chatosim chatosim dumi the pishoyim. Ma pishoyim sheni b'nei korban, afkatorim sheni b'nei korban. We're talking about things that you didn't bring a korban, that you're not in violation to bring a korban. So therefore, it must be talking about something that you had no yediyah b'soif, that you don't know anything about it. So you're not bringing a korban. So in that, the Sa'ir Hanasa B'fnim is mechapa. But maybe how do you know it's talking about a case where you knew first, then forgot, and never remembered? That the Sa'ir is like a protection for you. Maybe it's the opposite case. Maybe you never knew you were tamei, you violated, and then somebody came back after you did the violation. Somebody told me, oh, by the way, you were tamei. You yourself never knew you were tamei. How do I know? Maybe that's what the Sa'ir is coming to bring about forgiveness. Talmud loima, here will end. Talmud loima, l'chol chatosim, chayav echatas b'mashma. It's talking about something that could potentially lead to a korban chatas. A korban chatas is only brought if you knew you had this tumah on you, you forgot and did the violation, and then you remembered. So then you bring a korban chatas. But if you never knew in the beginning, and that you did the violation, somebody told you, oh, by the way, you were tamei, you don't have to bring a korban chatas. So here, the soy hanasa b'fnim is brought not instead of a korban oil of yared, but it's brought by somebody who could potentially bring a korban oil of yared. Somebody who knew he was tamei, forgot that he was tamei, did the violation, he did not remember yet. So this will protect him until he finally remembers, hey, I was tamei, I went into the base of English and bring his korban oil of yared. The sorry nasa b'fnim is like a protection until he remembers. Okay, we will stop right over here.
Oh, thank you.
We could just finish up the Gemara just a little bit to the next page. Omamar, we learned before. I could have thought that Sorry Hanas Bifnim is coming for the three cardinal averas. Tumas Avodah Zarah, Tumas Gilei Rayas, with Tumas Shvichas Dama. If you do any one of the three cardinal averas, that the Sawyer is bringing about forgiveness. So as the Gemara, three same kashas. What kind of kapara would the Sawyer Hanas Bifnim bring about? If you did it on purpose, then you get Misa. You did it on purpose. If you did Avodah Zarah b'shaygig by mistake, bar karban the Torah told you to bring a korban chatas. Answers the Gemara, I would think that it's the sorry nasa b'fnim is b'mezid v'lei ashabei. It's talking about you did it on purpose. They didn't give you a warning, so you're not going to get the misa. So there, it brings about a forgiveness. Or you did it b'shaygig by mistake v'lei yisyadilei, and you never knew. So that's what I would think that the sorry nasa b'fnim is talking about. The same idea. We go on top. Gila Rayis Heichadami. What's the case of Gila Rayis? If you did a rayas on purpose, the Torah tells you get misa. If you did it by mistake, you have to bring a karbachatas. So what would the Sari Anas B'fnim accomplish? We have a remedy for doing it on purpose or doing it by mistake. Same teretz. Maybe the Torah says here in Anas B'fnim is dealing with b'mezid v'lei asabe. It's dealing about you did it on purpose and they didn't warn you, or b'shoigig v'lei yisyadale, you did it by mistake and you never knew about it. So you never knew about it, so you're not going to bring a korban chatas. Same. So again, we're in a case where there's no misa or no korban, that's where the Sar Nas B'fnim kicks in. Shvichas damin nami hechadami. What's the case of shvichas damin? Why could I think it would be on shvichas damin? Iba mezid, if you killed somebody on purpose, bakatalahu, then you have to bring a korban. Then you get the death penalty. Iba shoygig bar galasu. But if you did it by mistake, you go into galus. So what would the Sar Nas B'fnim be a remedy before? Answers the Gemara b'meiz. If you did it on purpose, v'lo yasubei, they didn't warn you, or b'shoygig, you did it by mistake, v'lo yisyadilei, and you didn't know about it, or iname, even if you did it by mistake, sometimes, and you know you did it by mistake, you still won't go into galus. B'hanach dalab b'nei galus minhu. By certain cases where you don't go into galus. What is that? The galus, if you going up the ladder and then fell on somebody. So you don't go to Gullus. Only if you were coming down the ladder and fell onto somebody, you get Gullus. So there's certain exemptions from Gullus, and that's when I would have thought that the Sari Nas B'fnim kicks in. But the Gemara already established that the Sari Nas B'fnim is for somebody who had Yediyah B'tchila, and he forgot, and he doesn't have Yediyah B'soif, so the Sari Nas B'fnim is coming to bring about a protection. So we finished Daf Zayin.